Donald Trump's 2024 campaign released this scathing statement last night. Quote, Fulton County radical Democrat District Attorney Fani Willis is a rabid partisan, called election interference or election manipulation. It is a dangerous effort by the ruling class to suppress the choice of the people. It is un-American and wrong. CNN's Elena Treen is live with the latest. Elena, what's the word inside Trump world right now?
Well, Phil, they have been through this now 3 times before, and so they have a playbook that they have cultivated over the past several months, and they believe it is working, and so they're going to continue to use it, his team tells me. But one thing that I found really interesting is what Donald Trump posted this morning on Truth Social. He said that he was, quote, hosting a major news conference at 11 a.m. on Monday of next week in Bedminster, New Jersey. And Phil, he said that he's going to use those public remarks to present a report that his team has been working on, riddled really with the false claims that the election results in Georgia in 2020 were rife with fraud. Now, of course, we know Donald Trump has been peddling these claims for years now, and we know they're just simply not true. There were 2 recounts in Georgia that show Joe Biden won the majority of votes in the state. But this is clearly what Donald Trump and his team are using to deploy as their strategy to defend him. But one thing that I found really interesting about this is they're not just going to be arguing that this is election interference and that Donald Trump is a victim of political persecution. Of course, they will argue that, but they're also going to be disputing the facts of the case. And that is a bit different here. And one thing, Phil, that I'm really watching for is how Donald Trump's allies will react to that report specifically. We know that they immediately came to his defense last night after the indictment dropped, but will they, echo and share his continued false claims, really, that the election was stolen in Georgia?
Yeah, it'll be very telling who decides to go down that path. I think we both probably have some ideas of some names here. Appreciate Elena, as always. And here to share their reporting and their insights, CNN's David Chalian, Sungmin Kim of the Associated Press, and Republican strategist and pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson. SMK, I want to start with you because you are perhaps the most rigorous reporter I know, also very careful and fact-based. Elena made this point, but I just want to double check it with you. Has there been any evidence of widespread fraud in Georgia based on all of the court cases and all of the investigations and all of the audits?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I joke, but honestly, this is going to become important if they actually go down this route to not allow this to spread to some degree. And I guess that's my question. Elena makes a great point. They've had a strategy and a playbook which they've deployed over the course of the last 3 indictments, all of which have seemed to have been effective for their Republican primary audience. This is different. Why do you think they go down this route?
So I think well, first of all, this indictment is so much more sprawling, so much more sweeping than we have seen in the other previous 3 indictments. Obviously, there are other people indicted in this case, making this instance so much more far-reaching than in the previous cases. But I think so I feel like the Trump team perhaps needs to feel like they need a broader base of attack or in responding to these charges. I think that's a part of it as well. And I also think one thing you're going to see from the Trump team is that what the clerk's office in Atlanta says was a mistaken posting of that early version of an indictment that named President Trump. They are claiming that it was an error, that it was the wrong document. But you already see Trump's team kind of point that out and really seize that on to make their case. But I do agree with Elena that when the Trump team produces their so-called report next week, how many of their allies, not only just the people in the presidential primary supporting them, but their allies on Capitol Hill who actually seize on the report and use it to bolster Trump's defense?
Yeah, again, it's going to be worth watching and taking names on that one. Kristen, it's important, in my view, you're the expert here, but to differentiate a Republican primary electorate and the general election, where right now by 20 plus points, the former president seems to be headed towards. But on the primary front, I want to play something that the former president said a couple of weeks ago. Listen.
Every time they file an indictment, we go way up in the polls. We need one more indictment to close out this election. One more indictment, and this election is closed out. Nobody has even a chance.
I mean, I don't think that's a scientific or calculation there to some degree, but to that point, we have not seen any slippage in his polling over the course of the first 3 indictments. Do you think that this kind of locks things up for him, given where the race stands right now?
Well, I don't often agree with the former president's interpretation of the polls, but in this case, while I don't think that each indictment has caused him to have a massive spike, or however he defined it, it certainly has caused a bit of a rally around him effect. And it has made it harder for his opponents who are trying to introduce themselves to the Republican field to be able to get oxygen, airtime, and to be able to differentiate themselves. Of course, so many Republicans, even those who aren't necessarily planning to vote for Trump, nevertheless are sympathetic to his arguments that he's being prosecuted because he is a political opponent, because he is who he is, that the charges are too sweeping, that they're unfair. And because Republicans are sympathetic to this, it's put his opponents in the primary in a box where they are unable to really say, hey, Donald Trump could be facing prison time. We cannot nominate this guy. It winds up meaning that folks like Ron DeSantis are in a very tough spot. They can't differentiate themselves effectively, and it's made it harder for them to gain traction. So while these indictments, I wouldn't expect Trump to bounce 15 points in the polls per se, it does further solidify, I think, his larger gains that he's seen over the last couple of months.
And Phil, just to underscore something Kristen said there that I think is so important, what some polls have shown, I think largely most of the polls since these indictments, Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, but even people who are supporting candidates in the primary not named Trump don't want to hear those candidates go after Trump as it relates to the indictment. So it is broader than just Trump's base of support inside the party that just doesn't want to hear an attack on him on this.
Yeah, I mean, look, you wouldn't have the top tier candidates going against Trump refusing to do this if they were seeing something that gave them any indication that it would be of value to their campaigns. I fully understand. I don't necessarily get it when you're down by 30 points, but I understand that there's nothing telling them to do it. David, I did want to ask you, the thing I've been thinking about all day and definitely don't have an answer to yet is we have been talking about the cash crunch based on the legal issues that the former president has been having over the course of the last couple of weeks. The FEC filings really kind of laid that bare to some degree. This is the former president, another indictment, 18 co-conspirators. He's been helping or financing a lot of the legal fees for his allies here. You kind of map this out going forward into a general election. How big of a problem? If you look down over the course of the last 4.5 months, Manhattan District Attorney indicted, DOJ Special Counsel documents indicted, DOJ Special Counsel January 6th indicted, Fulton County DA 2020 election indicted. That money is still going to be going other places than his campaign organization.
There's no doubt about it. And you see in recent social media posts from the former president, that's getting under his skin a bit, right? I mean, as recently as last week, I think he was sort of bemoaning that money that he would rather be spending on television ads or campaign proper expenditures, he is spending on legal fees, not just for himself, but for his allies. And that's not where he wants that to go. I also think it gets at, again, how inextricably linked the political and the legal here is. That is the definition of Trump's 2024 candidacy.